Here are 5 fascinating things that I learned from working as a therapist for just over a decade, which is an experience I feel extremely grateful for because it taught me so much about people and human resilience and what really matters in life. In this short video, I'd like to share with you 5 of the most important lessons I learned. Number 1, people really can change. If you type "people don't" into Google, its first guess for the completion of your sentence will be change. The world seems to want us to believe that people don't change, but the idea is really quite ludicrous. If we didn't change, then we'd all be still running around in our Spider-Man jumpsuits trying to deface our little sisters, My Little Ponies. Just me? Definitely not just me. But either way, of course we change. We're changing every moment of every day. Our brains literally physically change to accommodate new information. They reshape themselves to make frequently thought ideas more efficient in the future. So if you choose to think something like life is brilliant every morning, then before long your brain will be really quite good at coming to the conclusion that life is brilliant. Repeat the thought life sucks on the other hand, and you'll probably notice the opposite effect. Our brains were made for learning because that's how to survive. Our cells regenerate, our values reorganize themselves, and we make and break habits all the time. Change is what we do. But there's a little part of us that doesn't want to believe this, because it's busy maintaining the illusion of a constant self. And because of that part, it can be really important to remind yourself that you are changing all the time, that you aren't the same person you were 10 years ago, and you're not the same person you will be in 10 years either. So if there's something that you think you're stuck with, then fear not, because you probably aren't. It's just a matter of training your brain to believe otherwise. Number 2, we are beings that think, not beings that are thought. Contrary to how it can seem, happy people are not happy because they just don't have negative thoughts. Their secret is knowing that those thoughts are not reality, that they don't have any real power. The simple fact of the matter is this: you cannot stop a negative thought from occurring to you, but whether or not you entertain it is entirely up to you. When I was working as a therapist, if a client was struggling with catastrophic visions of the future, for example, or an inner critic that spun torturous stories about their lack of worth, our sessions would likely involve some work for claiming control over the problematic patterns of thought. And you can do this too. It starts with awareness, the knowledge that we are thinking a thought, that we made it, and it is therefore not being forced upon us by some kind of external monster truth, already depotentiates it. After that, we can play with it, quite literally, to further deny its impact. Human beings are programmed to learn through play. We have been growing this way ever since our very first Spidey suits. And some of the easiest and most effective hacks for mental and physical health utilize this fact. We can use play in order to change our minds, literally. Here are 2 of these tools for you to have some fun with. Number 1, if you do your negative thinking in an internal voice, you can adjust the pitch and quality of this voice to change the emotion it evokes. I know this sounds too silly to make any meaningful difference, but honestly, it does. Everything we do routinely has a pattern to it, and that includes the way that we think our thoughts. So you might not have thought about it before, but your inner critic has a certain style of speech and a type of voice, and if you mess with that, your brain will find it much harder to complete its usual pattern and take you to Anxietyville or wherever it is you usually end up. So the next time you catch your inner critic telling you that you can't do something or that people don't like you, make it sound high and squeaky like Mickey Mouse, or low and slow like the tape recorder's running out of batteries. And then listen to it saying exactly the same thing again and check out how it feels. If it doesn't feel any better, then try moving it so you can hear it only on the right-hand side of your head, or on the left, or wherever it is that's different. I'm willing to bet good money that there is at least one way you can imagine those exact words and feel none of the old angst. If you struggle with an inner critic, pause the video now and try this out. Or if you do your negative thinking visually, if you tend to see yourself failing in some way or to picture something scary or off-putting just at the worst moment, try this. Notice your mental image, along with how it makes you feel. And then imagine that you can turn it into an old black and white photograph, so it feels less current, less real. And then ask yourself how that changes the emotion it evokes. Or if that doesn't make a difference, you can change your mental image in any number of ways. Make it brighter, lighter, darker, fuzzy, blurry, grainy. In fact, try all of these things out, taking note of any of them that make even the slightest difference, and then combine them into a kind of mental recipe or the ingredients of a magic spell, which you can use any time you find an image bothering you. For example, let's say that you find when you make a distressing image slightly blurry, sepia-coloured and small, it feels better. If so, the next time you can't sleep because the image of that embarrassing thing you did today just keeps popping into your mind, then you can take a few moments to turn that image to sepia before blurring it and then shrinking it. And this will tell your mind using powerful symbolic language that it's okay to let go of the thought. I use this particular tool often. And to really seal the deal, I usually finish by either imagining the image drifting really, really far away or mentally throwing it in the bin. Full disclosure, it does sometimes come back, in which case I repeat the process until it doesn't. Screen grab this step by step so you can give it a try. These things aren't magic tricks. They're just ways of making meaningful suggestions for your unconscious mind to hear. And the best thing about this, the more often you practice letting go or reducing the intensity of unhelpful thoughts, the less they'll occur to you in the future. Number 3, perhaps the most wonderful gift that a therapy practice teaches is tolerance. But tolerance isn't really the right word, because what I mean, no matter how cheesy it can sound, is love. As a therapist, you need to be able to love your clients. Not in a sexy way, of course, and not in a friendly way either. This is a different kind of love, but it is essential. If you can't practice from a place of love, then the work is unlikely to land. When I first learned this, I thought that it would be really difficult to feel love for every client. But what I found was that rather than being a challenge to access, this therapeutic love is kind of unavoidable. Hearing people's stories, what they've been through that has led to their decisions, the fear, shame and self-loathing that we all battle with in our own way, means that you can much more easily start to see past the errors and the questionable acts. It's not that we start to feel okay about people doing bad things. It's that we can know that they haven't done those things because they're fundamentally evil, but because they're struggling. The reason this is so powerful is that it means we can start to let go of the resentful drive to get people back when they mistreat us in some way which just doesn't work. As the old saying goes, holding a grudge is like drinking a mug of poison and then hoping the other guy's going to fall down dead. And it is so true. Resentment and anger just eat us up from the inside out. They use all of our energy and our time, they monopolize our thoughts and block our creativity without affecting the other person at all. And here's the thing, even if they did, it wouldn't solve the original problem. Someone else's pain will never take your pain away, even if that someone else is someone who has hurt you greatly. Getting even is a flawed strategy for feeling better about ourselves. It's far more effective to choose acceptance. This is because acceptance of the other equals acceptance of the self and vice versa. I believe it really is that simple. Learn to operate from a place of love and you'll experience less conflict both inside and out. This is not to say that it's easy necessarily, but then again, the things that are really worth doing in life rarely are. Number 4, every emotion is wonderful and useful. We talk often about letting go of anger or regret or shame. And when people visit a therapist because they struggle with negative emotions like these, they'll usually want to get rid of the feeling. But as psychologist Susan David so eloquently puts it, to wish for this is to have dead people's goals. I battled with fear for a very, very long time, so much so that my body started to break down. I burned out from the exertion of a chronic state of fight or flight because I was so determined not to experience my negative emotions. Ultimately, that crash forced me to come to terms with my resisted emotions, and doing so meant that I was able to see them differently. I had to learn that accepting discomfort was not the same as dwelling on it. It turns out that when you allow the experience of emotional pain, it, sooner or later, transforms into something else. If you don't, then it won't change, or at least not for the better. This, as always, is not to say necessarily that it's easy, but we can learn to live by this rule. Pain does not happen to us, but for us. And if we choose to start actively noticing and acknowledging how we feel a little more often, labeling our emotions and talking about them if we have someone to do that with, or writing about them if we don't, then gradually and over time, our feelings can start to flow more easily. And then you can take it to the next level when affected by a negative emotion, by remembering to ask yourself the question, what is this feeling here to teach me? That simple question, what is this feeling here to teach me, can be beyond empowering. It means that you can make meaning out of misfortune rather than feeling like the hapless target of terrible luck. It can help you to remember and feel grateful for the love that came before grief, the purpose that sits below the rumble of anger, and sometimes the most powerful thing of all, the motivation to stand up and do something differently. Finally, number 5 is this. Every day can be a good day. Okay, now obviously that's hyperbole. I don't mean it really. We're all going to have crappy days, but maybe we could have them fewer if we lived by the rules I'm sharing in this little series more often. If we can choose to remember that people really can change, including ourselves, that we create our own thoughts and therefore have some say in what we choose to think, or at least what we choose to keep thinking, that everyone is doing their best, and that every emotion is beautiful and useful. What we get is this. At any moment, on any day, we always have a choice in how we perceive our current situation and how we react to it. We can't control everything that happens to us, obviously. We can't control really anything that happens to us, but we can always control how we respond to it. So do we opt to feel victimized by the thoughts in our own mind, the feelings in our body, or the rubbish things that go on in the world? Or do we choose something different? A client of mine returned from a yoga retreat once, beaming because of something a Buddhist monk had told her. He had simply said, happiness is a practice. And while I wouldn't agree that happiness is necessarily the right word, I do believe that we can create a feeling of general contentment and okayness, as well as more ease and connection, by waking up in the morning each day and deciding to face, accept, and work with whatever that day brings. So, bearing in mind that I'm not expecting you to do all or even any of these things, they're just idea starters, try these questions on for size and see what comes up. If you could choose your perspective on life or on other people, what kind of perspective would you pick for today? If you could make one small change to the way you tend to act, just one tiny change, what change would you make? Which situations or relationships in your life could be improved by your remembering to see the good in others? And if you've been experiencing some challenging emotions of late, what can you learn from them that will make your future better? We have so much more control over our experience than we tend to believe. I say, let's start using it. A final note. If you had an answer to any of those questions, but then a little voice piped up and said, yes, but I can't do that because, then you can thank Mickey for his input, but kindly remind him that he can't tell you how to live your life. As always, I really hope this helps. And if you'd like to take an epic journey through a magical world in the name of personal growth, then you can download Betwixt, the mental health game, which is available on the iOS App Store and Google Play.